Well, it's a long, long journey to the capital city. It's a long, long wait while I'm sitting in committee. Hey, man, on this episode, let's talk about another bill. There's some pretty interesting stuff that's happening right now.
What bill would this be?
This would be House Bill 975, which was received by the House Principal Clerk on April 10th of 2025.
Why do I even care about this bill?
Well, number one, because I'm your best friend and I'd like to talk about it. And number two, the short title of this bill is EMS Personal Allow the Carry of Pepper Spray. And the current the current rules do not allow this.
Okay. What's the problem?
This is a bit of a change, and there's been a little bit of conversation about this in terms of this allows emergency medical services personnel while on duty to carry pepper spray either openly or concealed. And again, this is something under current rule, not even an option for our folks right now.
So I'm assuming that this is challenging to EMS systems in some way because we don't want them to have pepper spray. We trust them with all these drugs and stuff that they have that are prescribed and starting IVs and stuff, but God forbid they have some pepper spray because all of a sudden the trust level goes down on these people now. Is that
it
where we're at?
That's I think that's where we're at. Yes, yes, that's one hot take on it. That's a hot something or another. So yeah, I mean, I think that's some of the concern with folks is pepper spray is considered a less than lethal weapon. And when you start to talk about weapons or certain other hot button topics, I think that's concerning to folks.
Well, I mean, it isn't like this. Hey, let's put you know real weapons on them. Like I know there was some conversation about concealed carry, guns and stuff. And although I understand that one may take a different approach. I mean, pepper spray, pepper spray. Um, I guess I got a mixed bag in this. On one hand, I can see that it's well, I'll tell you, on one hand, I look at it as if you do spray the stuff in the back of an ambulance, I mean, that would be crazy because the stuff, would just get everybody in the back, potentially whoever's in the front. But at the other side, I also see, that's not our job, maybe, you get into healthcare to help people. There are, I guess, less lethal ways of defense tactics and stuff. I can see the argument on both sides of this one. So I think I will choose to argue all the sides.
Of course, of course. This is a surprise to absolutely nobody. You're going to what is it I always say that you're baiting, or you're out there
Well, you know
trolling.
what?
Yeah.
Here's the thing: is I don't think we have to worry about EMS people pepper spraying the patient. That's not going to happen. They're
Oh,
going to they're going to pepper spray each other.
you heard it here first.
I'll just let you know that if we go back in time and I'm on an ambulance and I have pepper spray,
You're going
I'm
to
going to
spray the
tell you
vents of the ambulance
these
and
folks
turn
that
the air conditioning on high so
these
when
folks that are
somebody gets
listening
in.
that are former partners of mine know I'm telling the truth when I say I will 100% pepper spray them by accident, just like they got the nitro by accident.
What?
Well, the only way to tell if it was any good or not is if you got a headache afterwards. And well, I didn't want to take that for the team, being a paramedic. So occasionally, you know, my partner would have a headache unexplained, but the nitro worked. So I could see pepper spray probably being more problematic with that. Well, I mean, it's good on beans. The
It,
Texas
it,
Pete bottle you have.
this is the hotter. This is the hotter.
Yeah,
Much like me, between the two of us, I'm the
yeah. Well, between the two of us, you look really pale right now. Okay.
Well, that's because you look like you got pepper sprayed. You look like somebody took some sort of chemical irritant, such as mace, capsium, pepper spray, or tear gas. And so that's some of the stuff on this that do I get to carry a tear gas gun? What is that? Do I get to carry that 40 mic? I'm
Does the bill
might
not
be
identify that?
might be
I think
interested.
I think the whole deal on the bill is that it doesn't identify that. It just says basically OEMS can't create a rule to say you can't do it, right?
No, I mean it specifically talks about the term pepper spray means chemical irritants such as mace, oleum, capsium, I don't know, or pepper spray or tear gas. So no, it's pretty specific with some stuff, but it's pretty open ended with some other stuff. So where they talk about in this, notwithstanding any provision of law to the contrary, North Carolina Emergency Medical Care Commission is prohibited from adopting or enforcing any rule prohibiting emergency medical services personnel defined, blah, 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 from considering carrying concealed or openly any pepper spray or anything else. And then Section 3 talks about the North Carolina Medical Care Commission and the North Carolina Office of Emergency Medical Services shall adopt rules or amend their rules consistent with the provisions of this act.
But it's not saying you have to carry it. So an agency could still say, no, we're not going to do that. So I sort of look at this as, like cannabis, right? Whether it's legal or whatever in the state or legal to do, just like alcohol, you still can't do it at work. So, I mean, there may be agencies that have to adopt that for their own. So I would say then, being a devil's advocate is what's wrong with the agency making a determination on that? I guess look at the cons on this, because or the pros or whatever. I mean, I think if you look at data, I think it'd be foolish to think that EMS isn't getting assaulted. I think that's on the rise, or at least it being reported is more common. So we're seeing a lot more of that. And but I also think there are other defensive, tactics that can be used, beyond pepper spray. So, but again, this is not saying that there has to be a rule that you're carrying it. It's just saying that OEMS can't make a rule that you can't. And is that not how it reads?
Yeah, that's how it reads to me taking a look at this. But I think you kind of have, this is shocking to say, a valid point in where maybe we should be focusing on other ways to defend ourselves, because if it comes to incapacitating, somebody's assaulting me, maybe I don't have the time to go draw up whatever it is that I'm going to give this patient. Maybe I don't have the time, the ability to do those things.
Right.
Maybe this is on my belt or in my pocket, or I don't know. But maybe my agency should be giving me some training in self-defense or less than lethal hands-on, that if somebody grabs me, that I can block that, or that I can parry their reach.
Well, and another thing, just to look further down the road, if I'm the EMS provider in the back of the truck and I get attacked, and I'm fortunate enough to get law enforcement en route to come help me, and I end up using the pepper spray just to get them off of me, am I compelled to now treat them for what I've caused? And if so, does that make me more liable because, I'm trying to
You
defend
caused that.
myself
Yeah,
and
yeah.
now I've caused it, and let's just say that it's determined that they had a mental health issue and they end up with some damage of something that pepper spray can do. Now I think as an EMS provider, my concern would be I don't want to have pepper spray to be put in that situation so that I don't have to make that decision, or B, and I mean, how many lives are saved out of pepper spray? Is there a growing concern that EMS people are being attacked and it was due to the lack of pepper spray that would have helped this? If that's the thing, then fine. We need to get back on something more important, like figuring out daylight savings time, whether we're going to use it or not. Stuff like that's more important. Yeah.
That's like you people, you're like,
You
let me
people.
cut let me cut six
Who's
inches
you
off of the
people?
top of a blanket, 6 inches off of the top of a blanket, and then sew it to the bottom of the blanket, and then I'm going to say that my blanket is longer. Listen, we talk about carrying pepper spray. There are agencies. I do not think that this is a North Carolina thing, but I read an article about this recently. There are agencies that carry handcuffs, and whether it's on the ambulance or folks who carry it on their belts, and they were talking about for professional
No
sir
doubt.
use.
Yeah. Of
Yeah,
course,
and
EMS,
and
what else would
and
it be?
and there was a bill introduced, or there was something introduced about no longer carrying handcuffs, and some agencies were saying this is part of our identity. This is how we restrain patients. I don't know. Is this going down that same path? Is House Bill 976, which I don't know what it really is, if that really exists. Is that the provision that allows EMS providers to carry handcuffs? I don't.
I don't know. Again, I think it's about and is this different people putting this bill together, or is this one the same collection of
No.
folks pushing it? Collection of one, I guess I should say.
No, so really noteworthy statement to talk about with this bill, that this bill, totally different group of folks. I would have to look. It's somewhere out near the North Carolina Zoo. Those folks that are the sponsors. I've just looked at the sponsors and not the co-sponsors. But I believe the three sponsors, two of them do represent, I believe, Randolph or one of those neighboring counties. And then there's three or four co-sponsors on it as well. And none of them are the individual that we've talked about before in the past. So
Maybe we
that's
should
what's
reach out to
interesting.
the real Bradley Cooper and find out how many pepper spray incident, how many EMS providers were assaulted in Randolph County that was could have been helped
Mm,
with this pepper
mm.
spray on the belt.
This, I think, is the real concern, and this is the conspiracy that you've been talking about,
Well, now's the conspiracy.
much like a sniper on a grassy knoll, or multiple gunmen. You and I were both in that same museum. We saw the videotape, we saw the angle, we saw the X on the ground. There's no way that's where he chose to shoot. I think
I
taking
didn't
that.
go on record saying that. I didn't go on record.
That's what you said to me
I
earlier.
don't have
That's
time
what
to
you
go
said
through
just before.
60,000 newly released documents either. So somebody
so
will.
so in that same vein, what is being covered up that's happening at the North Carolina Zoo that those EMS providers need some sort of defense? I'm just.
Funny you say that. There's no shark attacks at the Outer Banks. Okay. Um,
It is not my representative that
right.
is on this.
Well,
So what do you think is the answer is really the wrong word. I mean, I've got a laundry list of negatives to this. Hey, you're in the back, and the patient attacks you. Well, number one, maybe you should be paying attention to that patient a little bit better and seeing what's about to happen.
sure.
And then you spray them because you don't have time to draw up your ketamine or your Valium or your Versed or whatever it is that you're going to give this patient. And weird, because now we're talking about medicine on the EMS podcast, probably the first time ever.
What is that?
And exactly. And so Terry Sheehy's driving, because that's what I do for my
All
best
he
friend.
can
I'll
do
drive
because he's a chief officer. But
I
go ahead.
drive him to the hospital. Well, as you talked about in our previous episode, you are most qualified to do patient care because you can pass national registry. I can't. So so as I'm driving to the hospital and you deploy that pepper spray, is that a cloud? As you pop your, I don't know, tear gas grenade, is that a cloud that's going to affect me in the front of the ambulance as well?
Yeah, I think that's so here's the thing. I'm not if the bill is saying, hey, we want to create a thing to where the Office of EMS can't make a rule against that, then okay, fine, good, do that. Leave it to the agencies and their liability. I almost want to say, I assure you, the local government based and hospital based and private EMS agencies out there are also not going to allow it. But maybe if there is a law enforcement driven EMS agency, they might, or maybe it opens up the door for EMS people on tactical teams to use I don't know, man. I don't. It. This is just an odd thing for it to be a bill and it not be something else to it. This is sound. It sounds like to me, it's like, hey, we just don't want you making rules saying we can't. But here's the thing: if you do a true risk assessment inside of your agency, to get back to the things it is we talk about, and that's leadership and management, is if there's agencies out there that are pushing this and you're finding yourself in this situation, then I think you should be exploring these other non-lethal defensive tactics and train on them. Train on those things, because if I remember correctly, part of the training of tear gas, if I remember, I had to do it when I went into the Navy, and I had to get sprayed with that stuff too. And it might not have been as bad as the other stuff, or it could have, for all I know.
Thank you for
But
your service.
is that how? Is that part of the? I mean, I thought that was just the Navy being mean, but I think I've heard law enforcement officers tell stories about how, in
Yeah.
order to get, just like we start IVs on each other in class, so you'll know what an IV's, and it could be the same thing, that in order to be certified um, in tear gas 101, you have to take tear gas to the.
Like if I'm a law enforcement officer to carry a gun, I have to get shot first. I don't. Uh,
Well, I mean, maybe they do shoot with the little simunition rounds and stuff and pellets and things, and I'm sure it'll hurt. And if I could ever get you in a situation like that, I would show you. But maybe tear gas isn't. Um, I don't know. Is
Maybe
that the
next time we
training?
teach officer class, that's what we can do is I'll tear gas you.
I mean, there's new EMS people out there that complain because she slammed the door too hard and it messed up my hearing, made me jumpy. I don't think I can say, hey, in service this month, we're going to come in and everybody's going to get pepper sprayed in the face, whether you like it or not. Problem, problem, problem. I don't see this being, if it does go through and everything, cause there's some stuff going on to where you're having to be deterred about, one House bill on National Registry, and one we haven't talked about, the one on franchises. Then maybe this scoots through. But if it's just saying OEMS can't make a rule, do we really need OEMS to make a rule? Or do we just have agencies do what's in the best interest of their people and make those decisions? It's almost like render the power to the agency to make that call, since the liability will ultimately rest on that medical director and potentially that agency. Would you not agree with that?
I mean, I would think that if somebody had been, I don't know, like we probably should maybe talk with the BLET director, maybe somebody who was a dean of public safety, and they might know some of those standards for BLET, because I think that is a pretty standard thing. Hey, if you're carrying a taser, you get tased. If you were carrying pepper spray, you're getting pepper sprayed. But I think, yeah, at the end of the day, this does just say that the agency, to me, it leaves it to the agency. It leaves it to that local or that home rule. But I would almost, and I'm just going to refuse to answer your question because I was busy thinking of other things.
I like
I,
that.
yeah, I know. I would almost say, hey, does this mean we sat down a couple of years ago? This wasn't just you and I, but when we sat down a couple of years ago, there was a conversation about things like, if the one of the basic things, job responsibilities of an EMT was driving an ambulance, why is it that EMTs graduated, they finished EMT class, and there was no driving? Should in EMT class, should we be talking about some less than lethal or personal defense? Do we need to tack on 4 or 8 hours for that, or do we leave that to the agency?
What if this is just a gateway to set precedents to include other weapons later? Maybe this is the small, if I get non-lethal, now we're talking conspiracy now, right? But it is politics. So let's talk. Is it possible that it's like, hey, we're just going to introduce this small thing to get non-lethal stuff in there, get it to where that can be allowed at least, and then we're going to follow that up with something else more. Once we prove we're okay with the pepper spray and we're not spraying each other. By the way, we will be, just to be clear, people are going to spray each other with that stuff for fun. Which mainly, I remember my real best friend, who will remain nameless because it's not you, is he used to have this thing with clove oil. You ever had clove oil?
I've never heard of a cloval before. What is that?
I'll show you. Actually, it's better for me to show you. But he would do this thing with cloval. It messed your night up. It's fun stuff, man. It was a good time in the 90s. But
Would you
that's
put
the
it,
type of things you could
did it
expect.
go in the microwave? Is that where the cloval went? No. Okay, just checking. I just maybe this is that gateway. Maybe this is that entry to
Yeah, how
you could
could you do
be
that?
right. I'm just saying, maybe this is that entry to the next in 2 years. Maybe this allows EMS personnel to carry lethal weapons
Yeah.
on or about them.
Uh, why is EMS so much up in Raleigh today? I don't know. Um, but there's just so much more. Listen. I'm gonna get back on some soapbox stuff for a second.
Oh, okay,
There is
please.
so much brokenness in EMS systems, the EMS system in the state of North Carolina, that we really talking about some national registry, franchise, and pepper spray stuff that ain't even addressed what's broke. So it's like, not only are we not focused on the thing, we're now having to turn our attention to focus on things that ain't even about the thing that even if you got perfect word and everybody agreed with, franchise don't fix broke, national registry won't fix broke, pepper spray ain't gonna fix what's broke. We do have to have a system change, and this is the best we can get out of our representatives. I mean, and it could be that this is the best we're bringing to them. So
Well, I
people
think,
got to get
yeah,
it together and bring the right things to them, or maybe we are, and we're just talking to the wrong people. Those people aren't loud enough. I don't know. I'm not that guy, but I'm saying that it certainly looks like that we are having a lot of conversation about a lot of stuff to piss us off, to make us concerned, to make us question. Uh, uh, we're not getting in EMS anymore for blood and gore, lights and siren, thrill, because that doesn't exist nearly as much as it did when we started. And now, as we sit on this edge of doubt of whether or not we chose the right profession to be in, whether you've been in it 2 days, 2 months, 2 years, or 2 decades, we're talking about stuff that makes us feel uncertain about our job. We're talking about things that's taking the eye off the ball, and that's what we choose to do. In the meantime, they got these other things over here trying to institute blood. We're trying to figure out how to use ultrasound. We're trying to figure out all these other things, but we take our eye off the ball so we can address these other political things that, even if it fixed a hole, it is not the one that's letting in water on the sinking ship. It's just chip on the side. Anyway.
I think if we're asking for House bills to be introduced, talking about whole blood, I would love to see a House bill that forces, whether it's my local hospital, my trauma center, but really at the end of the day, my local hospital, that forces them to do blood exchange with me. So okay, I'm on the hook for buying the equipment. I'll spend the $12,000 on the equipment, one time cost, and then instead of throwing away blood every 22, 25 days, that I'm able to just go to my local hospital and I'm only paying for it when I use it. I I would love for that house to bill to be out there. So anybody who's listening in podcast, radio, or wherever you like, subscribe and
Germany.
smash that share button. I would love for that bill to be out there.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't know where the grassroots of where this stuff is originating from completely. I know the theories that are out there, and these other stuff, but let me tell you something. Um, our EMS chiefs are not stupid. Our EMS people, they're also not stupid. Our EMS educators certainly aren't stupid. But I want to remind everyone, the politicians out there are equally not stupid. And we throw shade, and they do. We throw it all over the place. And that
Yeah.
might work in tearing down a paramedic. It might work in tearing down a chief or a college or something. Throwing that type of shade work. it will not work in politics. Not that is where they thrive. So we have to come up with a different angle than just throwing shade at the politician, because I think we've experienced 8 to 12 years of that in the big house of throwing shade back and forth, and it's went both ways. Okay. So we see that it's not very effective regardless. So I think to be the professional of the professionals, that we have to combat it with common sense, logic.
No such thing.
Yeah, common sense, logical answers, of whatnot. So when a bill or something like this is introduced, we should look at it as, how do we navigate it? Should it exist? How would we navigate it? Instead of just saying, oh, death and destruction, the world is going to come to the end. Everybody's going to pepper spray everybody. Everybody's going to quit because they're required to be National Registry. No more franchises. So John and Terry start up a van service, a Sprinter van, by the way, and we go out and just start picking up people on the highway and taking them to the hospital and billing Medicare. Whatever the next thing is. By the way, you would probably drive because I need to be in the back. But yeah. I can pepper spray you while you're driving. It would be so awesome. Sharks.
Be the undoing of both of us.
That's all we need, is another one of them.
So how do we better educate? How do we better educate our leaders, our elected officials, instead of talking about this stuff that maybe 2% of people, 1.5%, I don't know, 2.5% of people are interested in national registry, or 1 or 2% of people are interested in us carrying pepper spray on the ambulances. How do we focus on the core issues, the important issues, whether that's blood, whether that's access to dollars, to EMS systems run at a deficit, making that revenue, that reimbursement, which is way broken. And I don't have much faith that this 5-year study is truly going to give us a definition or answer for that. But how do we fix this for Bill, who's just sitting here on Capitol Hill?
So what I would say to this is, if anything, the current climate of the franchise, the registry, and the pepper spray has entered politicians having to learn what it is and how it applies to EMS. And there's a lot of voices out there that are writing letters to say, hey, I oppose.
Pen
I
pals.
oppose.
A lot
I
of pen pals today.
oppose. So where are the letters to the same politicians, now that you're opening up this conversation, that say, I propose, I consider this, here's our need. If you now have the ear, right? If you now have the ear of a politician, it's one thing to talk about the matter at hand so that you can get that across there. But you got to have the vision to look beyond there too, and create a relationship with the person to say, listen, I don't want to call you ignorant in EMS, because that may very well be what you are, but I don't mean it as a slur. I mean it as, let me educate you on the real deal of what's going on here, because I see that maybe pepper spray is a solution. I see maybe National Registry as a solution. I also see eliminating franchises as a solution. But let's talk about other solutions. Let's talk about what are some other things that can be done. Why this way? And that's the door that is now open. I would take advantage of this door, very similar to when COVID happened and EMS ran with we're all burning out and everybody's, we can't staff anything and everybody's dying and we got to do something. And we got funded well and increased salaries and stuff off of the whole, the British is coming type response. And yeah, it made sense to my head. Okay. It made sense to me, but I'm just saying, when we take that and eventually, those funds go away. And you're left with, what did we learn from it? And I don't know anybody can answer that question when it comes to COVID. So I don't want to start that one today. But I will say this is with a politician, many times they're not interested in a need EMS has. And if they are interested in three particular things, well, we should use those to sort of streamline to the other things that really are issues, right? Is we should bind them together and say, you know what the real problem is? It ain't got nothing to do with peanuts. It has to do with the peanut butter, you know. And so then you're getting them to say, wow, I didn't know that. Because somewhere along the way, somebody had a problem with paramedics or EMS getting beat up and not being able to defend themselves, the credentialing process and franchise agreement. So I mean, at some point in time, that conversation led to something. And I think it opens the door now, especially on single sponsor or very small sponsored bills. I wouldn't want to lose the attention, at least if I can start to educate, more uninterested politicians, people that don't know EMS. Now here's my opportunity to explain to you not why we shouldn't be National Register or why we shouldn't have pepper spray or whatever the case may be. Let's talk about it from the ground floor of what happened in EMS. And these are our chiefs, our county managers, these folks that understand these things, maybe even some program directors when it comes to education. I think when National Registry opens the door, you don't just talk about impact to EMS agencies. You got to start talking about how this affects the education system too, right? So, I mean, it's literally looking at education. So you get those doors and that dialogue started. Now you become a trusted source. Now when these folks, they just don't know a person yet to call. Post Malone, sings a song with I got a guy.
Ariana Grande.
No. It's country music. You don't know about it. I ain't got a guy for that. Well, I think a lot of politicians sit around and they say EMS. I ain't got a guy for that. And I don't mean that gender related. I just mean they don't have a person that is their EMS go to. Or if they do, who is it? Because it sounds like to me they're holding the door open for you to walk in and be that person.
Let me shift the conversation. One final thing as we start to wind down. I sometimes masquerade as a middle school social studies teacher, but in a recent meeting that I was at, there was an update about some of these legislative items that could affect EMS. One of the things that came out of this, you and I talked about this, and I don't know if you knew this. I didn't. I'm not North Carolina educated in terms of that stuff, but
Facts.
concerned that, huh?
I just said facts. I was agreeing
Yeah.
with you.
Concern that if it's a single sponsor bill, so that national registry bill that we talked about in a previous episode, so that national registry bill, well, if that sponsor gets some other bill that makes crossover, they can go back and they can edit that other bill and insert that language into it. So the other bill, I could make it up. It could be free donuts and coffee for police officers on the first Friday of the month at Dunkin' Donuts. And then you could insert that language into it to say, oh yeah, and national registry is a requirement for North Carolina State Office of EMS.
Well, now if you change the language of that and said free donuts for EMS folks and at Krispy Kreme, which is the
Yeah,
premier
yeah,
donut, I could probably get behind. I'll live with the national registry piece of it. Just give me the Krispy Kreme donut. And I think that's what you mean is that they'll slide it in under something everybody is more favorable of.
yeah.
I don't think that'll be the case. There's too many hands involved with these things. Do I see the pepper spray thing? Maybe only because it really doesn't change anything. It just says you can't do something. Hey, OEMS, you can't do this thing. But the agencies are going to be like, well, we will, maybe. And if they want to take on that liability, okay, you're going to take it on. It's just like the ones that take on listen, it's like the ones that take on the liability of drug assisted intubation. In the whirlwind of the storm of it being such a problem, heavily looked at in the spotlight, some agencies still say, hey, we still want to do it. We want to try it. We're going to train and we're going to do these things. And some agencies said, not us, man. There's too many problems with it. We don't want to take on that liability. I think putting it in the hands of EMS like that for those agencies, what's wrong with that? That's my 2 cents.
So maybe that's the answer is there's some liability doing this, and what is that agency desire for liability in the end?
Well, it sounds like we're gonna have to go back and edit this episode and mess it